Remember the 70s and all those golden hits? K-Smile Records is hoping that you don't, and that you don't listen to the oldie station either. The voice that I'm doing there was intended as my little nod to Dave Thomas, who was, of course, one of the cast members of the great sketch comedy show SCTV, and his recurring Harvey Keitel character, which was, of course, a spoof of the stereotypical fast-talking TV commercial announcer guy. And as for the commercials themselves, since it's running, the whole idea behind doing these parodies at the beginning of each Record Ripoffs episode came from my spending too much time on fuzzymemories.tv, which longtime archive viewers will be familiar with that site. But for the uninitiated, it is a website that's devoted mostly to off-air TV recordings, mostly from the Chicago area. And, of course, if it's something really unique, like a really early home video recording, they'll take it from anywhere, but generally. Now, there's this small selection of commercials on the site, and they are for compilation albums, but not for compilation albums where it's the actual artists and the actual hits, but it's for these things where they're trying to convince you that, yes, you're really going to get an album of 12, 15, 20, 25 hits. I've never seen that guy before. Whatever. But anyway, you're going to get all these hits on usually one LP for some weirdly low price, like $3.99. And, of course, if you've heard the hit versions even once, you can usually go, yeah, they're just trying to rip me off. But, of course, those things sold, I guess, just well enough, and there were enough people that were just not hip enough or they didn't care that they bought them. And they still make the damn things now. Granted, it hit its peak in the 70s, and that's why the Record Ripoffs episodes tend to spend so much time in the 70s. It's not on purpose, and I'd actually, as of my recording this, I'd kind of like to move away from that, even just for one Record Ripoffs episode. But anyway, I haven't introduced myself. Do I really need to at this point? I will anyway. Ben here from the archive. This is episode number 28, which is the second episode of the second season, and it's Record Ripoffs. And I've been wanting to discuss this for a while, not just this specific episode, but just Record Ripoffs in general. So here we are. Now, before I get started, I want to note something going on in the background here, and that was just one of those funny little upshots of my trying to upgrade my setup. You'll notice that the closet door is open behind me. Now, towards the end of the first season of Archive, the whole first season was shot on digital 8 tape, and it was, as such, in the standard 4:3 aspect ratio, the almost box, almost square picture. And I was just spending so much money on tapes that I must have spent a good $100 on tapes on the first season, and I wasn't even doing that many filmed segments yet. But the thing with tapes like that is the quality just gets worse every time you take a new pass at it. So I always had to use fresh tapes, and I was just burning through them like there was no tomorrow. And it reached a point where I was like, I'd like to start doing more on-camera stuff. Maybe I should consider getting a modern camcorder that runs on an SD card, and that's exactly what I did. And I found this open box I knew it wasn't a great camcorder. I mean, the whole Carpet Vision gag for Archive, as of my recording, this still hasn't gone away. But I got it open box, and I had some sort of 10-15% off coupon, and by the time all was said and done, I think it was about $150, plus I think $10 for an SD card, but they're cheaper now, but yeah, at the time, it really truly was a budgetary thing. So yeah, I'm sure you really wanted to hear about that. And also, during that first season, I did not own a tripod at all. The camera I'd have a stool, a separate stool that I'd plop the camera on and just point it at me. And that's why the angles are invariably off on the first season, and the more you know. Now, I don't remember if I had gotten a tripod quite yet by the time this episode rolled around. I think I might have, but for whatever reason, I just didn't use it. Because on the record segments where I'm showing my turntable, for whatever reason, I just decided to hold the camcorder, and you can see me kind of swaying along, not on purpose or anything, but I don't know why. It just hadn't occurred to me that I could just move the turntable and use this newfangled amazing tripod thing and point the camera down at it and have something that looked a little nicer. Of course, with the closet thing, I suppose I should finish that thought. It was, I was clearly thinking too much about the material and not enough about the aesthetics. So, the closet door, as I said, was open behind me, and I did the first episode of this season, Bicentennial Fever, with the closet door open, and I didn't realize it was open until after I had finished, and then I did, and I didn't want to have to go back and redo the whole thing. But I knew that I had the first few episodes of the season lined up, and I knew I was going to be doing a VHS vault on fashion videos. And so I was just like, maybe I can use this to my own advantage. So I intentionally took a bunch of my shirts and just really put them in the shot like that. I know it's so subtle and nobody would ever notice, but this was my thought process. Put them in the shot, and that way I could build up to it, because I have a tendency of wearing just plain t-shirts and blue jeans. That's just how I am. That's what I do. And I could use it against myself in the fashion videos episode. And I burned way too many brain cells on that, because it's so funny in retrospect. It pissed me off at the time, but I was thinking so much about that one little area that if you look at my desk, there is some post-it notes and just crap on the desk. So I wasn't even thinking clearly enough to go all the way through with thinking about the whole shot. And of course, the microphone was still a lot lower. Of course, nowadays it usually just hangs in the upper right corner. And the reason it was lower was because during the first season, it was less real estate, so to speak, on screen. But I wanted the microphone to be in there because I knew if it wasn't, the sound of the microphone would be a little off. And so I guess I was thinking a little bit aesthetically. I just didn't want to cheat anybody into thinking that I was maybe tacking on the voiceovers afterwards or something. But just a second ago, I was doing that cover of Payphone by Maroon 5. And I remember that I actually wanted to try and sound a little bit more like Adam Levine there, and I just couldn't do it. And then I realized, well, Ben, you've got the most annoying falsetto in the world. Use it. I mean, I sound like a Midwestern American Barry Gibb, and with about 1% of the charisma. So I just was like, just run with it. These are record ripoffs, and they are gonna sound bad. That's the point. You can out-bad them. So I just took the same approach I did to the Lady Gaga cover that I had done in the Emergency Broadcast Salute episode. A bit of a problem, and, well, you know. So the bulk of the covers that you hear on this episode were not from my collection. And that goes back to the last few episodes of Season 1. I was looking for topics to kick off Season 2 with, and there's a website that I love, and I've mentioned it before, classicalgasemissions.com. My friend Ben, no relation, not like I've never used that joke before, runs it, and he must have just the most insane collection of junk albums, because he'll post them, sometimes just a song, sometimes the whole thing, to his site. And when I was fishing for topics and he had these things, I listened and I knew I had to do this. And it's so weird because never in a million years did I think I would ever want knockoff albums in my collection, because I guess you could say there was a little bit more of a personal axe to grind with it, at least initially, because the album right here, I really did get that at a garage sale when I was 10 or 11 years old, and it really pissed me off when I got it, because I thought I was getting this great deal, and I watched way too many reruns as a kid, but to me, the idea of having a record with the themes to Welcome Back, Kotter and Laverne and Shirley and so on and so forth was just too awesome to pass up. So I got the record and I brought it home, put it on my hand-me-down turntable, and I was just livid at what I was hearing. And I clearly didn't learn my lesson about reading the fine print, because a few years later I bought a 2 CD set at one of the big box stores, I think it was Circuit City, of hits of the 70s. And I got burned again. And so the very notion of not getting the real deal just annoyed me so much. And I was able to channel that coming through here, but I just think it's kind of funny that something that annoyed me and I swore I would never get one of these records again, that I did. I've discussed this particular commercial before for Italian Dance Party. I've done the whole episode commentary. I did an episode on it, one of the Halloween episodes. That particular commercial, it actually really influenced how I did things with Archive, and still do, especially when I'm making fun of a commercial or something, because if you watch the commercial straight through, and you can go on Fuzzy Memories and see the whole 2-minute ad, the editing's kind of glitchy and the audio is weird. You'll hear the tape getting up to speed on something, and you'll hear somebody hitting the stop button on another, and so I started to build that in, because by this point it was becoming obvious that this was going to be something that was really going to be a big part of Archive, and so it's very significant on that front. This commercial, and there's another commercial in here for the fill-in-the-blank golden hits of fill-in-the-blank year, so 18 golden hits of 1976. QMO Records, and I never have figured out what QMO stood for. When I see something like that, I figure it's one of two things. It's either people's last names, last initials, or they were just taking letters and sticking them together because they couldn't think of a real word or anything, and they wanted something that sounded kind of, sort of official. And a TEJ, like this record, is the same thing. I don't know what TEJ stands for. Tin-eared junk was, I think, something I pulled from Fuzzy Memories. QMO, I settled on quickly molding oldies, and I've gotten some viewer suggestions on it. I got one that was quit making oddities, and it doesn't really quite make sense in the greater scheme of things, but it is funny at least. And these albums clearly have left some sort of mark on Archive viewers, because of all the record ripoffs I tend to get asked about, the QMO albums are generally the ones that come up the most. Sometimes it'll be a specific song outside of it, but just that one song. But as far as labels go, this is the one. And I've had donations for the last few years of these albums. Viewers just keep finding them and sending them in, and I will discuss them at some point. I think I've got about half the 18, 20, 22 golden hits of such and such a year, and I will get around to them at some point, so clearly it means something to somebody.
Out of order. Rush 295 to hits of 70, 205.
Now, there's a couple of missed jokes in this episode that still kind of crawl up my ass, and I still can't believe I didn't do them. I've never been one to pass up a stupid, cheap joke, but I guess I was having that one little moment here of, oh, that's too easy. Why would I do that? So earlier when I'm talking about the modern sound-alike records, and I do the little bit of the cover of Whistle by Flo Rida, I was going to look at it and go, Florida, as if it's one word. I think the guy is from Florida. Florida, what the hell is this? But for whatever reason, I didn't do it. I should have. And then this particular album, Let the Good Times Rock, there isn't a whole lot of rockin' going on. It's mostly ballads, if I remember right. And I think I was gonna have some sort of reference to that, and I just never did. And, of course, that's the album with the now infamous rendition of Scarborough Fair by Simon and Garfunkel on it. And that's one that I would actually recommend that you go on to Classical Gas Emissions and find and listen to straight through. I did not add the crying Betsy Wetsy dolls in the background to that one. But if you listen to it, musically, it's never very good, but it starts out kind of, sort of, just by a thread okay, and then the dolls kick in, and everything just completely falls apart. And I can't help but wonder if they were sitting there with a microphone and a Betsy Wetsy doll and just making it cry, and then maybe overdubbing a bunch more, because it seems kind of convenient. This particular song, the cover of Tumbling Dice by the Rolling Stones, that's one of my favorites, and I think it's a viewer favorite too. That's one I still hear about, and I've had a few viewers go back and try and further decipher the lyrics, so I always love it when something like that happens. Here's a mistake I made in the episode. This version of Proud Mary by Creedence Clearwater Revival. I put the wrong 8-track picture in the thing. That's actually the Rolling Stones 8-track there. Just a stupid, silly, careless oversight on my part. Simon and Garfunkel sure happen a lot on Archive, don't they? And when I hear these, you just gotta wonder, was it really that much of an issue to take another stab at it? Because the errors could be so totally egregious. You just go, why would you let this out the door? Yeah, it's a knockoff. Yeah, but have a little bit of pride in your work. Seasons in the Sun. This is probably one of the better ones on this particular episode because it comes reasonably close to the original by Terry Jacks. I think I might have just put it in because... oh, I remember why. Because he couldn't get the phrasing right. I had to think about that for a minute there because it's actually musically fairly close. But if you listen to the original hit version of Seasons in the Sun from Terry Jacks, as I said, the phrasing is actually really difficult. And it's obvious that they had to splice together two vocals because they kind of tread on each other at times, but there's this definite push-pull sort of phrasing going on, even if it was just one voice. So, to me, you can make fun of that song all you want, but it's one of those songs that just the musician in me hears it and goes, that's actually kind of cool. That's kind of something odd to try. And then this cover of the T-Rex song right here, I'm not entirely sure why I put it in there. I think I was just so amused by the limitations of the 8-track, even though I'd already had some experience with it. I hadn't really done it yet on Archive, and so I just wanted to have that really long transition between the programs and references to just the quirks of the 8-track format. So most commonly you'll have maybe 30-45 seconds of a song at the end of a program and that fades out real quick, and then you have to wait for it to kick over and then it starts back up again. And I've had 8 tracks with the same song twice just to make it work timing wise, and it's just silly. This version of Total Eclipse from the Heart does not come from Classical Gas Emissions. I do not remember where it came from. But it's another one of those ones where I just hear it and I go, how did this make it out the door? The notes are so sour. How did this happen? And the version of Dream On here is a personal favorite of mine, and I had a lot of fun making the little mini sound effects montage to go with it. I think we're getting down to the last 2 or 3 minutes of the episode here, so let me finish things up here by discussing just record ripoffs in general and the process. And it's a tedious process. Of course, there's the fact that I have to find enough record ripoffs albums that I think are good enough, or bad enough, as it were, to discuss. But it just takes a really long time to make these episodes. It usually takes me a few days to transfer the albums and clean them up, and invariably they are in such dire condition that sometimes songs that I really would like to do, I just can't put in the episode because the vinyl is so screwed up, be it by abuse or just bad vinyl, that it'll skip like crazy and I can't use it. So sometimes they fall through the cracks, and I burn CDs of all these record ripoffs albums, and I'll have to write damaged, unusable next to it, and that always really sucks. And it takes, as I said, it takes forever to make a record ripoffs episode, so that's part of why they're kind of infrequent. And even then, it keeps it fresh, it keeps it fun, it keeps it something to look forward to. So, yeah. Now, my process in getting these albums, it's so amazing. I frequent the thrift stores and the worst used record stores that I know of, and I'll pick them out as I find them. Just anything that doesn't look quite kosher. If I can't find, say, a real record label on it that I've heard of, an established major label or something, or at least a major indie label. And so that's usually the basic criteria for me to pick it up initially. But then when I get it, I've found that my initial reactions are always the best. So what I'll do is when I first put the record on, I'll sit there with either a tablet or I'll have the computer on and I'll have a Word document open and I'll just type my initial thoughts about it, or maybe something specific to it, like a bad vocal or a bad musical performance or something like that. So they're fun to watch at the end, but they are kind of a process to make. I'm glad that they're kind of a cult favorite amongst what is already a cult show in Oddity Archive. And this episode's over now. It seemed to go really fast, so I will shut up now. And Ben here from the archive. I'll see you, or at least talk to you again soon.